Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Jonah and the Pod. Today, we have very special guests. We have someone that has been on the podcast before in my good friend, Stephen. Stephen is a fantastic human, I guess.
Keep going.
Keep going. We're all in a bit of a fun mood today, so hopefully we keep this up, but hopefully it's a bit fruitful. So yes, we have Stephen, and I'll get to the intro part later, but we also have Jesse, who you may know, but you may not know.
Hello.
Jesse is they're cousins.
My cousin.
We're cousins.
So Stephen and Jesse are cousins. Has there been another cousin on the podcast?
No, cousins, step up.
Yeah, no other listeners have been on this pod.
Thank you.
They are nephew and niece of our pastor, who has been mentioned a lot in the podcast.
Did you say nephews?
Nephew and niece.
Did you make me a nephew?
If you want to be a nephew, bring the mic close to you.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Stephen is a worship leader. Jesse is part of the worship team. I guess I
play the piano.
Yeah, but he leads the worship team. Like, he's a leader in the worship team. He's not a worship leader.
Yes.
As that's what he said to me. And today we are just going to talk.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking. So I guess firstly, would you like to introduce yourselves? I know, Stephen, you have introduced yourself. Wow,
Have I?
English, but
I have not prepared this.
that's fine. Just what do you do? What do you enjoy? What's passions?
I have nothing in my brain right now. Yeah, my name's Jessie. I work in human resources in media and advertising, and I go to church with these people. As Jonah said, Stephen is my cousin. Jonah is my friend from church. I serve in worship. And I think that's it. What else do you need?
Do you want to your age?
I'm 27.
Damn.
27.
I'm joking. Yeah, it's pretty good. So I think I love it. I love when I ask people that, because they always everyone buckles.
You don't know what to say.
Tell me about yourself.
Tell me about yourself.
I don't know anything
But
about
it's
myself.
interesting how people answer it, because some people go straight to their job. Some people go straight to what they like. Some people go straight to spiritual things or their family and that sort of stuff. But I don't know. Everyone answers it differently.
Yeah.
Tell me about yourself. It's very much job interview vibes, but
I don't even know how to answer in a job interview. I'm usually my name, which you have right there in front of you.
Yeah. To be fair, you did say I work in HR, but you can't say that at a job interview because.
Oh, that's true. Because very good.
Stephen, you just want to remind people who you are.
So my name is Stephen. You've seen me before. I'm the youngest of three.
Oh, I should have said how many people are in my family.
Come from a big-ish Jordanian family. I love God. I love Jesus. I serve in church. And that's probably a bit of a summary.
That's good.
Yeah, that'll do.
Do you have any passions?
Passions. What do I love? I love a lot of things. I love the Bible. Okay, so I love to study the Bible. I love to read. It's not always easy, but I love the Bible. I'm heck. Heck is an Arabic term. It means how do you define heck? I wouldn't call myself those music lovers who they Bobby is an example of a music lover. Music is just his world. He's just always listening to new music and new lyrics and new songs, and he's just super excited about that sort of stuff. I think I'm a musical person, but I'm not a music head. Okay, this is a question. I spend a lot of time in the car with no music. I don't know if that's sociopathic, but
no sound, nothing.
I just like to sit in the car with my brain and silence.
Don't you usually do that after a big event where there's a lot of noise?
Event, work.
Yeah.
I just love silent car rides. It's just, especially long day, you get into your car, you close the door.
There is something therapeutic about having a silent car ride. There is. Yeah. But sometimes...
Do you do it?
Yeah, I do.
Oh.
But not all the time. Like, I do love having music on. And like, I usually, like, I do love music, kind of like Bobby. I love music. I don't have a favorite genre. I listen to absolutely everything. And so sometimes I'll be sitting at an event and I'll literally be thinking of a song. And as soon as I get in my car, I literally want to play that song. So like, that's my like thing. But I also do love sitting in silence in the car.
Do you do silent car rides?
No, I'm not a big music head.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I'm just like a podcast head.
But you listen to podcasts in the car.
Yeah, that's like the main thing I do.
You know the one question everyone's wanting to know.
Do you listen to your own podcast?
Not really. Because I'm here for the podcast. I feel a bit weird. Like I was actually, you know what's weird? I was thinking about that this morning, and I was like, "Is it bad that I don't listen to my own podcast?" And I was like, because I feel like there's not enough podcasts. Oh, there's heaps of podcasts, but not enough podcasts that I actually enjoy. And like, should I just listen to my own? But I'm like, I don't want to listen back and be like, Jonah, how dare you say that and stuff like that? Because in the moment, I thought that was right.
Yeah.
But now maybe I've learned differently or something. So I'm like, is it going to ruin my head? And I'm like, I got to delete that episode or something. I don't really want that to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think that will happen, but there's also that fear of it. But I do listen to some that I feel like are maybe a bit risky. I'll listen to before. But I guess when I edit, I'll also listen
to listen to it, like in the car. Yeah. Before you edit it.
You know, my challenge with music is that it genuinely affects me. So if I'm listening to like certain songs or certain artists, or I feel like it will affect my thought processes and it will affect like my appetite towards like spiritual things. It does feed my mind, like the songs that I listen to. So but also at the same time, I don't know. I struggle to, I don't feel like there's enough, like I'm so dry musically now. Like if I'm going to like open my Spotify, I'm like, what have I not listened to that I haven't already listened to 1,000 times? So like, please send me some good songs. Like I'm just.
Yeah, I agree. Like the same thing with me, songs. I really have to be in the mood for songs. I can just always.
What have you been listening to recently?
Songs wise?
Yeah.
Oof. Like it's just always the same thing. There's one song that has been like hitting home, and it was like the first time in a long time that a song has like meant a lot. And it's called "I Am Set Free." I sent it to you actually.
Oh yes,
"I Am Set Free," and
who's that by?
It's by All the Sons and Daughters, but I listened to the Shane version, but it has affected. Like it helped me a lot, and I made like a. If you can see, I don't know if you can see my phone screensaver. I made this, and I made like the one where you open because I can't see anything. But the verse that it ties along with is, "For freedom, Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery." And I guess briefly is because I think the way we act sometimes is that we are like, we know that we're free in our heads, but we don't act like it because we actually don't believe it fully. So I think that's why a lot of the times we act like we're still chained up. We're still slaves to sin. I think it's a mental thing more than anything.
It's interesting because like freedom, we're talking about freedom, right?
Yeah.
So freedom comes with, like when I think the idea of freedom is that you're free in the sense of like there's nothing being imposed on you, but freedom scripturally actually involves obeying the commands of God, which sounds onerous, but like Jesus himself has said, his commands are not burdensome. So it is a bit like, what's the word? Like it's an oxymoron, or it's like counterintuitive, because it's like, okay, you will be free if you do X, Y, and Z. It's like, but if I look at that logically, it doesn't seem that it's going to free. It actually seems like it's going to be really difficult to follow those things. But when you follow those things, you will find that there is freedom. So the commands of God are for our own good. They're not to steal our joy, but to give us joy.
Yeah. And I think if you have the mentality of like, why I think a lot of us probably have and probably maybe do, is that we have the mentality of like, why would God make this a thing. And there's still stuff in the Bible where it's just like, it's still hard to swallow, like a hard pill to swallow. Like, why is God like this? Or why it's for our betterment. And that's just something we have to
betterment.
Betterment? Is that a word?
What's that word?
I like that.
Is that a word?
Is it?
Betterment.
Betterment.
Like, is it like it's better for us?
Yeah.
Huh. That's good.
I don't know. Maybe I just made up a word.
I like it.
Yeah, there's a lot in the Bible, and I think something that actually I've been thinking about a lot recently is when we talk about certain situations, it's, and I've been having like, I've been in a group chat with like a lot of friends that non-believers, believers, and they always debate. And I always think about it. I'm like, the non-believers, they come up with like good arguments of like, why is there bad in the world and all this stuff, like the usual stuff. But what I think about is like, how are we trying to sort of God is so far beyond anything that we can even think of. He's so far beyond like why is there bad in the world? Maybe we can't make logic of it. I think we sort of can, but even if we can't, he's still God. Like, he's still far beyond anything that we can even think of. So who are we to try and like make sense of everything? We can try and make sense we should try and make sense of everything, but we should come to the conclusion that we can't make sense of everything. I think a downfall of myself and humans in general is that we try and make sense of everything when there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of gray area, which is interesting.
You know what's interesting? Like when we talk about freedom and the like commandments and like obedience and stuff like that. And then I was talking about an example of like music before. This is something that I never impose on people. Do not listen to secular music, because I think that that's foolish. Like there's heaps of great secular songs out there, but like how do you like sort of differentiate that, and like how do you explain, like what do you teach? Like obviously you're in youth leadership and like you'd probably have your own songs that you listen to. Like do you listen to secular music, and like what do you I've shared with, I'm going to spin it because I want to hear from Jesse as well, and then I'll answer, because I think I've spoken about it on the podcast before, but so I want to hear from you, Jesse. We're going to spin it.
Yeah. So my music journey has been a lot. Like are you okay? I love music, right? And I think that a lot of people can, I guess, like relate to this. Like there is obviously there's conviction that comes with a lot with music, with the words, with the meanings behind songs. And I did face this a couple of years ago because I used to listen to everything, and I did it like things weren't hitting as much. And then when I went through my like a bit of like a bit more, I guess, spiritual maturity, and I was kind of getting into like Christian music more, and it meant something different for me. Like it was so much deeper, and so I think that made me realize like that I need to kind of be careful about what I'm feeding myself, because like music really changes my mood. It makes me think a certain way. It makes me view things a certain way. It makes me feel differently about myself. And I think that like that's why you got to be careful about what you listen to. Because I was just gonna say
your
face was telling me I need to.
No. I'm just trying to make an active effort not to go into the microphone every 2 seconds. Like, I did that last time and it was so painful. No, I was listening and just. But like the reality is, like, music is good to listen to. There's some songs out there that there's some sort of like crack in it. It's just so addictive to listen to, and it's.
Like beats, like the beats,
the music,
the drops.
even like the vocals or like whatever it is, it's good to listen to. It's addictive, not necessarily in like this evil way, but it's just like there's joy in music for sure.
That's why you have to be careful though.
Yeah, I think, but this is the thing is, even as like we're believers, but we live in the world. And so even secular songs can speak to our human experiences. And so sometimes we listen to a secular song that really describes something that we've experienced, like in any sort of context, like in some sort of sad, depressive context, or like relational or whatever it is. And it's like, it feels almost like
spiritual.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, yes. It's like I've been seen by this artist. And then you have all of those like crazy fans who are like, your songs changed my life, right? And it's like people mean those things when they say that, right?
Yeah.
But
I think we have to be careful about that as well.
100.
Is the way that we worship artists. Because again, like when you love music and you love listening to certain voices and stuff, you put them on a pedestal, you make them like this holy person when they're not. Like they just have a gift and like yeah. And yeah, you're right. Like it does add to that spiritual experience.
You know what I was thinking about? So I've just read the book of Exodus and I was thinking about Moses with Pharaoh, right? And when Moses was trying to get the Israelites out of slavery, he performed what would you say? Miracles. He performed miracles in front of Pharaoh. So the first miracle that he did was he turned his staff into a snake, right? And then the
magician,
the sorcerers, the Pharaoh summons his sorcerers, and they did the same thing. But then his staff swallowed up all of the other snakes, and then it turned back into a staff. And then that repeats, he performs all sort of miracles, but then the plagues come. And it's so interesting that the sorcerers are actually able to mimic some of the miracles or some of the plagues. So for example, they were able to turn the water into blood, right? But what's so interesting about that is that wasn't helpful. Though they had done something spiritual, they had just basically like, they didn't add to any solution. Like what Pharaoh really needed was for the Nile to turn back to water instead of blood, or to like kill all of the locusts or the frogs, whatever it is. And this is just a really obscure connection that I'm making, but sometimes secular music feels like that, like what the sorcerers are doing is they're mimicking something spiritual because it is something spiritual, but it's not actually helpful. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that's amazing. I never really thought of it like that.
I think when we become Christians, we die to self. And I think that, oh my gosh, my train of thought.
That happens.
Yeah. We die to self. But what I was trying to say is that it comes with certain sacrifices. And this hits hard for me because I love music. I've said that enough today. But because there are certain songs that I just love to listen to. They make me happy. I like the beat, the lyrics, the vocals, like even the lyrics, because like the lyrics are like in this scenario, it's not great. It's not actually glorifying God. It's not honoring God. And for me, it's like that dying to self. It's like, okay, well, I really want to listen to this song. It does have that dopamine hit when I listen to it. So like, how do I actually then get my joy that I would be getting from this song that isn't honoring God from God, right? So like, firstly, it's like, okay, dying to self means I'm not going to actually be feeding myself that because I don't want to be listening to that if it's not, good. But then also you should just be getting that joy from God in that scenario. That makes sense?
Yeah, no, that does make sense.
I think for me, it's hard with music because like the secular music I would listen to is like Adele.
Adele's good.
Yeah, Adele's good. But like sometimes I'll listen to like just other rap artists and stuff like that. Yeah. But music isn't my biggest thing. But I watch a lot of YouTube and all this stuff. Something that I've realized in my life is when my relationship with God is the strongest it can be, my YouTube like recommended or everything I'm watching is like, I can't say everything, but the closer I get to God, it's like the more it's just theology stuff or like spiritual content. Or debates or spiritual content, and then
like truly spiritual content.
Yeah, and things that are like actually fruitful to me, and that's where I think like media can be helpful. I'm learning heaps and all that kind of stuff, but then when I'm sort of dropping off, the entertainment sort of thing, it becomes more appealing to me, where it's like, it doesn't matter if they're swearing. I don't swear, so it doesn't.
Right, that justification.
Yeah, like it doesn't really affect me.
Yeah.
Which, I don't want to say like this is the way because I know everyone has different sort of perspectives, and I don't really care about music too much.
Yeah.
Literally, the was it last year? 2 years ago, Jesse recommended me one song. That was my most played song for the year.
What song was it?
Shelter.
It was Shelter.
Tori Kelly?
No, Mosaic.
Mosaic.
Oh. I thought Tori Kelly.
The next year,
Yeah.
Ashley recommended me a song.
Can you sing it?
On the podcast.
I don't know Shelter by Mosaic.
I actually can't
I don't
remember
want to
either.
sing it.
Can you sing it?
Shelter.
Wow, that was so good.
Um,
But the next year, Ashley recommended me a song, and that was my most played for the year.
I'll play it for you
That's
later,
fine.
Stephen.
Wow. Okay.
So now I'm just waiting for someone to recommend me a song
Right.
this year so I can listen to.
Yeah.
Actually, Jonah did recommend me a song.
What
Khalil?
was the song?
It's I forgot what it's called. I'll find it.
But I think let's get one thing straight. Where,
So-
like, I don't think any of us here are saying like
Don't listen to
secular music is bad. Do not listen. I think for me, my message to anyone who might be watching this would be just proceed with caution and reflect on when you are listening to more secular music, what is happening in your mind, what's sort of like the trend of your life, what's the direction that you're going in when your secular intake increases.
this just to this is Shelter.
Oh, yeah. Such a good
Are we
song.
going to get copyright issues?
I haven't heard this in a while actually.
I've never heard this.
It's a good song.
Sorry, just real quick. The song that Jonah recommended me was Mercy / When I Think About the Lord.
Oh.
Who's that? Who? By who?
Common Gathering.
Oh, yes. He's
Oh.
trying
But
to
the thing is,
calm
I only
down.
like the first half. I don't really like it when she gets into When I Think About the Lord.
That's so annoying when a song, you just like half of it.
Yeah.
I have a song like that as well.
Yeah.
The one by Jonathan
Ogden. Sorry, Jonathan Ogden. I love the
Oh, I
song.
thought you meant Jonah. Like,
No. Yeah.
No, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, you know, when you first became a Christian, I had this experience where I didn't want to listen to secular music at all. I was like, what is it feeding? Like, how is it feeding me? How is it actually helping me grow? And I remember thinking, like, I don't see a point to it. I've been a Christian for 12 years now. That was like 12 years ago. So now I do I still like to listen to secular music, but to your point, Stephen, I just think you need to be really mindful about how it has an impact on you. You know, if you are someone who does get influenced by music,
This is what I think we need to we need to be conscious of. We can't control, like, are we influenced or are we not influenced? I think
Just-
what we feed our mind with, like what we read, what we watch, what we listen to, all of those sorts of things, I think it's actually really ignorant or naive to be like, oh, no, like it doesn't, I can listen to, you know, trash music. Like, let's use an example, like a extreme example, and I won't be affected at all. Like, it says in Ephesians, like, not to even speak of, no, I don't want to butcher the verse. I'm going to open up.
this is a chronological Bible. It's so hard to find stuff in there, so we'll get to it.
Okay, we'll go through this one. But keep going, Jesse, because I did interrupt you.
I think that was it. It was fun.
Yeah, I think I think I agree with you, Stephen. It's like it doesn't impact me, which is
It's
a
Sorry,
dangerous.
I'm going to correct that because I didn't mean it that way. I don't think I think we should be mindful that anything that we watch, listen to, hear, even like friendship influence as well, like who we hang out with the most, who's speaking into our life, who's giving us advice, everything's going to impact us. And if it isn't something that's going to glorify God, then you are just feeding yourself that.
I think that's self-reflection and stuff.
Yeah.
I think you just got to be conscious about what you are listening to, what you're reading. And honestly, a good way to test it is, can I go without listening to it for like a week?
Yeah.
And if you can't, then there's probably an issue there as well. Like, and if maybe you will see a lot of differences within that week, like, oh, I'm thinking about this less, or my language has changed for the better. Hopefully, like, I'm not saying this will happen, but there's a possibility that it may happen.
Yeah.
It's good to just test things.
And what I was saying before, like, I don't know if people face this as well, if you struggle with this, but I do sometimes. Like, sometimes I've been in a situation where, like, I'll listen to music because it does give me that, like, joy. It gives me that happiness that really I haven't sought from God first. So be careful, be mindful of the fact that your mood is changing and you're not actually seeking, like you're not going to the source first.
Mm.
And that's like anything, really. Like you should be, doing like having your quiet time, speaking to God first, and then everything else is just extra. It's all a bonus.
Sorry, I have the verse. It's not actually really relevant to the point. I apologize. But the verse is Ephesians chapter 5, verses like 11 to 12, when it says, "Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret." I'm not entirely sure. Like, I can't fully explain that. But basically, I think we just need to be cautious. It's not do not listen, do not because we are like in the new covenant, like we do have freedom. We can do everything, but not everything is beneficial. So I think it's just proceed with caution and examine yourself when you are listening to like what is that doing to your appetite for God and your appetite for church and your appetite for worship and reading and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I think a verse that we quote a lot, but maybe we don't actually live, because it's very difficult to live by. I think it's 1 Corinthians 10 verse 31. Or is it I can't remember. I remember 13 verse 10. I don't know. But it's in everything you do, whether you eat or drink, do it for the glory of God. And I think we say it a lot, but I think the way we live, for me, when I play sport, this is me exposing myself. When I play football, my team, I've realized like that's when my pride comes out the most. And something I've been trying to work on a lot recently. And the more I'm working on, trying to work on it, the more I feel like the devil's really trying to attack it, because it's something that I didn't really notice before. But now he's like, oh, you notice it now. Now I'm going to really like hammer into you. There's a lot like that. And whether it's listening to music, it's like, what are we really doing here? I think God can, like, I'm still allowed to play video games, but just how am I playing video games? Like, or what video games am I playing?
That's a good point. Like, is it in moderation? Is it in excess? Like anything in excess. I was talking to someone today about how when I sleep in excess, like my life just goes downhill. Like my productivity at work, my everything, I just become lazy and unfruitful, like everywhere. It's terrible. Yeah. So video games, secular music, like you can name anything, and in excess, it will be bad for you. Obviously, there's some exceptions. You can't pray too much. Oh, I mean, you probably can, like if you're just praying and you're not acting. But generally speaking, we probably don't pray enough. But, yes, you can eat too much. You can sleep too much. You can drink too much wine. You can do all sorts of things too much. You can listen to too much secular music. But if you do have it in moderate amounts, that's a wise thing to do.
And even like further that, it's even if like it's the way you do it as well. Even if I'm doing in moderation, am I like flipping tables when I play video games? Am I getting angry, or am I worshiping the singer, or that's why I like, this is a personal conviction, but I'm very hesitant to go to concerts because I have to actually self-reflect, like what am I love the music. Like I've been to Ed Sheeran, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I've never really been obsessed with Ed Sheeran, so it's like, but if I even sometimes with like Shane, which is worship music, but if I were to go to, I don't know what you would call it, like a concert for them or whatever, like am I sort of, this is a personal conviction, I'm not trying to go on anywhere, am I actually just going for Shane, or am I going to experience the music? Which
I think you can go.
I know, I'm not saying, but I'm saying like,
you're saying like, are you going there for the artist? Like, are you going there because you like the artist?
But they're a Christian artist. Like, what's wrong with that?
No, but that's what I'm
like. Are you worshiping
Is he putting them on a pedestal?
That's what I'm trying to say, because there are things that are they're still human, but they are representing Christ and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like I could be so in awe of you, but maybe I'm relying on you to be my savior, because
I feel like I know what you're saying. I think that's an
extreme.
It's an extremist. I say personal conviction. That's
no, fair enough. If it's your conviction, but I
always second guess. Like, if
what's interesting? Like, if we go back to the whole secular music thing, let's just say that God said to you, and it was so clear, I don't want you to listen to secular music. Full stop. Right? what is our assumption if he were to say that, right? Because he can say that. He created joy, like true joy comes from God. So if he's going to say, I know for you, Jonah, that I'm going to ask you not to take part in this, and it's for your joy, I think our assumption is that it's not. Our assumption is that if God is going to give us a command that's onerous, that he's a killjoy, and it's to take away our joy. And yeah, I had more, but it's it's flattened in there.
That's like the point that we to bring a full circle is like the point that we sort of started this with, of like God actually says some things that we can't. Like it's hard for us to swallow, but it's for the benefit of us. Like. I'm not going to name things because it's a bit controversial, but there is some stuff where I'm just like, interesting. I understand sort of why God put it in, but it's so hard for me to actually obey, or it's so hard for me to do it. And I think once you fully understand it, it makes sense of why. Or once you actually start living like that, you understand, okay, now I have more peace. Even though maybe I'm not enjoying, I have more joy.
You know what's a big one? Yeah. Is it sounds cliche and obvious, but forgiveness. So it is so much like sometimes when God calls you to be kind to someone, it's like, why? Like I'm actually so justified not to. I actually have every reason to be rude or to be cold or to some way like punish that person. And then, well, God actually calls you to extend grace to them. Like sometimes God does call you to take distance and whatnot, but sometimes it seems so onerous and heavy. It's like, Lord, I can't do that. And it actually, we say, no, I cannot obey you in that way, Lord. But God says, but you have no excuse. I've given you my very word. I've given you my very spirit. You actually are very capable of doing the things that I've asked you to do. You're choosing not to do them, and that's because you're disobedient, and that's because you don't have faith in me, and you don't actually trust me. So I think that's definitely probably one of the strongest examples in my life is, Lord, I don't want to be kind to this person. I'd like to be somewhat like punishing because I feel that they need to know that. And it's like, well, the grace of God has led me to repentance. Why am I now extending judgment to others? But I think, you know what? The reason I brought up the whole, okay, what if God asked me to stop listening to secular music full stop? Would I? Like, that's what I think about. It's like, I'm so adamant on like my rights. I'm so adamant on like, no, I want to do that. I want to do this. And it's like, I think part of my journey, like with God is like, you know what, Lord, you said it. I may not like it, but I love you. And so, Lord, you know what? Help me to do it. And I want to do it because you said it. And I think that's the position we should be taking, like especially those who are more mature, especially those who have been in the faith. It's not about being in the faith for a long time, but for those who really want to please God, like it doesn't matter what he's at. If it may seem extreme, absolutely. It may seem really radical. Oh, you like this guy doesn't listen to secular music. Like, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. And then all of a sudden people feel judged because of the way that you're living your life. It doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, like I believe God makes it clear what he requires from us. Like when we're truly seeking him and we're walking with him, he sort of tells us like the things that he requires of us. And I say this a lot to the people around me, but God has asked us, like the requirements for me in my life are not complicated. I would, without knowing everything you're going through, I would also say the same is true for you. God doesn't require really complicated things from you. Actually, what God requires of all of us, in my opinion, is generally simple, but hard. It's difficult. And I think we start to think it's complicated because we're not listening. And we think that God's asked us to do his bit or God's asked to do someone else's bit. But the reality is God's asked us to do our bit. And my bit is not that complicated, but it's hard and it takes prayer and it takes obedience and faithfulness to Jesus. So I think that's that's where I think a lot of these conversations around secular music, video games, you name it, that's sort of the heart of where I stand on these issues.
Yeah, I love that. And I had a point and I lost it.
That happens so much on this podcast. No. Like when I'm on the podcast,
it happens to me all
Because you
the
don't want to
time.
interrupt them, so you're just like, wait,
Yeah.
I'll bring that
Because
up.
I'm listening, but like I had a point, and they just fuse, and you're just like, well, what
I was
happened?
actually going to say, like, something to what you said is loving God more makes other things like so much less important, you know? So if you,
sorry, I'm just so warm.
Yeah, the lights will do that to you.
I'll just wait. So
No.
you can edit this out.
No, we're not editing it out.
Yeah. So I think the more that you love God, the more that you immerse yourself in his love, other things are just not as important. Like, as much as you might actually still love video games and movies and watch that, like listening to things, like that is still like not your first priority, you know? And it's not like, even if you listen to a song and you're like, oh, that doesn't actually sit right with me. Like also loving God more and feeding on his word and, you know, feeding your spirit with him. It actually does make you then realize, like it does make you, when you're listening to stuff or watching stuff, it doesn't sit right with you.
And that's happened so many times to me where so music is the clearest example I can think of, but it happens in other areas of life as well. Like I might be typing an email, or I might be in a conversation with someone, and I just hear such a faint voice in my mind. And it's like, oh, don't say that.
Yeah.
Ooh, don't keep listening.
Yeah.
And I
yeah.
actually think that is the Holy Spirit of God in me.
So still. It's so quiet.
And it's so easy to be like, I'm going to keep listening to this. I like it. I'm not bothered to change it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it, like, and I'll quickly justify it, but we rob ourselves of the joy of obeying God completely when we do that. And we should listen to that small voice in us, because it's God in us. Like and the more we listen to that voice, the louder it becomes. And it actually makes obedience to the things that we've struggled with, eventually that muscle becomes stronger. It's like, oh, hold on, I don't even have an appetite to watch these sort of videos anymore. I don't have an appetite to listen to this sort of music anymore. I don't have an appetite to speak about people in this sort of way anymore, because I know it's wrong. I know it doesn't, I might be justified in a human sense, but I know it's not right in God's eyes.
Yeah.
So I think that small voice is so underrated. Yeah.
And to that as well, for me, music is nostalgic as well.
True.
So I have like playlists of songs that I used to listen to before I was a Christian, you know, or before it was that, like, you know, my faith was important to me. And so like when I go back and I listen to those songs, they're like, it's so true. Like now I hear that voice. And so I went through a phase where I deleted like most of my playlists on Spotify, because I was just like, none of these actually glorify God. And then I made new playlists, and now that's just like the mindset that I have.
Yeah. So, I remember what I was going to say, and it's it's actually good that I forgot, because you actually added to it before. So it's interesting, because I mean, Paul says, I do what I shouldn't do, and I don't do what I should do. And whenever I am about to do what I think I should do, whether that's actually spend time with God, like pray or whatever it is so difficult. But if it was like prayer is talking to God, but if I was to, okay, I need to talk to Stephen, I'll just call you, no problems. And I start thinking, like, why is it so difficult for me to just start talking to God?
Yeah.
I'm going to get a bit vulnerable, but the other day, I think 2 Fridays ago, last week, I literally, on the way to church, no music. This is when I sat in silence, because I wanted to pray, because my driving time is usually like prayer time, and then I'll probably talk on a podcast or something. And I wanted to pray, and it was like, because of traffic, there was like 45-minute drive or something. For 30 minutes, I was sitting in silence, wanting to pray. And then I was like, bro, I have 10 minutes left. Like, I need to pray. And that's why I just forced myself to start talking. And I was like, man, why is it so hard for me to start talking? And the truth is, I think we have forces that are trying to stop us to do that kind of stuff. and there are forces that are trying to actually get us to do the wrong stuff, which is listening to terrible music and all that kind of stuff. And it's very interesting because it's like, why? And that's actually something that's helping me. It's like, why is it so difficult to do this, or why is it so easy to do this? And that's something. I don't know if that will help you guys or help you guys, but that's something that helps me.
You know what I was gonna say is just on the whole killjoy thought. So I have been watching The Chosen, right? I really do recommend it. Maybe that's controversial. I really don't know, but I just it sort of opened my eyes a bit more to what Jesus may have actually like looked like when he lived, or he walked with disciples for 3 years in his ministry. And the fact that he actually had a mother on earth, like all of those sorts of things become more like visible and tangible to me after watching it really well portrayed. It's not a corny Christian series. But oh my goodness, my brain. Where was I even going with that?
You're talking about The Chosen and the depiction of Christ.
Oh, the joy. Okay, this is what. So look, this may be a little bit like, maybe some viewers didn't enjoy this, but in the series, Jesus actually has a sense of humor, and it's like, oh, that's shocking. Like God doesn't laugh, but it's like we are actually created in the image of God, right? And laughter and joy must image God in some way, right? Like, and this is the thing, is we've actually become, like, Satan has so perverted the good things about God that when we think about joking and humor, we instantly think about coarse joking or dirty joking or humor that's dark and, you know, mixing spiritual things with humor and mixing, you know, really sad things with humor. Like, I get dark humor exists, like whatever, but we don't, this is a hot take, but do you reckon there is anyone funnier than God? Like, think about it. Like, humor itself, like, think about the funniest person on earth. That humor that they have, which would in and of itself be a gift in the joy that would be coming out of that person and shared with all of the people around them. That's come from God. Of course, God is the giver of joy. He's the giver of humor as a gift. And I think we instantly assume that the closer people assume this about you, if you become more serious about your walk with God, that you instantly become less funny, or like less interesting, or you become more boring, right? Which is, it's actually true, like in the sense that I'm not going to be partaking in the same things that used to be exciting because they're no longer exciting to me. But I think that there is like there's such a humor that we can have. Like, I don't know. I think like
I'll give you. I can't give you the exact example because it's a bit personal. But there was an example in my life where I sort of tested God, which I wouldn't recommend. But it's like I was like, God, if you want this for my life, then make it this way. Like this is going to happen, and if this happens, I'm going to know that's from you, which is interesting. But what happened is that God, he doubled down. So he's like, oh, you want that? I'm going to give you even more of I don't know how to explain it without showing the example. But I'm going to make that happen, but I'm going to make it even more obvious. And then that happened. I was like, oh, thanks, God. And it turned out that it wasn't what God wanted from me. I was like, oh, so now you just, you're sort of just laughing and just like, don't test me. And I look back and I'm like, that's so funny. I'm like, I shouldn't have tested God, but God did that. Like, thank you for having a humor. Like, thank you. It feels weird to talk about in this way because God is so awesome. Like he's full of awe. So when you're talking about God being funny, it's like he's like holy. He is perfect. He is still God. But I really like the pun,
but it's like, I don't know, the whole image of Jesus in this series, it was just like, there is such thing as humor that isn't so vulgar. Yeah, that's the word.
I love it. I actually like it because I never really thought about but like laughing is an emotion, and
Yeah.
God gave us like laughter.
No, it's true.
Because like we're allowed to be humorous, we're allowed to be funny and stuff. But yeah, it's true. I think. But this is a maybe controversial. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but a lot of I think a reason why people will listen to secular music or even just watch secular shows or whatnot is because I think maybe worship songs or Christian shows and whatever can be depicted as very boring,
Right.
and just like humans as well. That's why I love like Christian rap.
This might be controversial, but this might be controversial. But do they just serve a different purpose? Like
what serves a different
like
purpose?
for example, there's entertainment, which is like movies and shows that are secular and worldly. And by worldly, I don't mean like but then also like the Christian things, they serve a different purpose.
Yeah.
Like they actually
absolutely,
they serve, like education and like worship.
Can I say, sorry, I don't mean to change the subject, but the reason why I think this is such a conversation today is because music, TV, movies have become so much more explicit.
Yeah, that's right.
Anti-God. Like music these days has actually become so vulgar. Like the youngest artists are singing about the filthiest things.
Yeah.
And that's why to actually find, music or shows, like I was shocked when I saw like the first two, I didn't actually watch it, but someone was watching it like near me, and I saw the first like 2 minutes of Euphoria, and it was legitimately like pornographic. And this is what
worst, though.
Yeah, well, this is what
so
is what like high schoolers would be watching. Like when I was in high school, like I'm trying to think of what TV shows were out in high school. Like
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob's great.
No, but they're still in like for instance, Friends and stuff is
It's there. There's a lot of like. But it was hidden. It was a little bit more implicit. It was a little bit more like, like for example, you watch Shrek. Right? Like Shrek had some things in there that like only the adults would understand.
Innuendos.
Right. Yeah. But now it's so in your face.
Yeah.
And it like there's nothing is hidden anymore. And it's like now I'm like, I can't even, if I wanted to listen to like secular music that is not just disgusting, like I actually have to listen to music from like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, or like even 10 years ago.
But you know what happens? This is my opinion, but I think like those shows or those songs sort of paved the way because people just want to, the way to get attention these days is to get more extreme, get more extreme. More.
That's true.
So like, that's why you see all these streamers doing, I don't know if you know anything about streamers, but the streamers doing like the weirdest things or the worst things. That's why you see a lot of like girls doing like selling their bodies more and more, and it's so open these days. I don't know if you've ever even like touched Twitter, because whenever there's a sporting event, we go on Twitter or something and see people's reactions. But these like you can't actually do that anymore because it's just explicit. And I'm just like, what is going on these days? And it's because it's just. I think even like Friends and stuff, like if I were to watch Friends now, I'd be like, whoa, like what's going on? And it's because I think it's just like slowly building up to what we have now. And if that's the case, I'm scared to actually see like what can be further than this. I feel like we've peaked in.
Yeah, can it get much worse?
I don't know. Unless it goes full circle, but I'm not sure.
And that's why it's like, okay, do we now become this like puritanical, we don't listen to anything that's like, absolutely like biblically accurate and spiritual and this and that. And it's like, I don't think that's the solution. Because we still live in the world and we still need to reach the people around us. But it's definitely, I think that all the more we have to be set apart to God and we have to be set apart away from those things. But like God is working in this world, and God is like bringing, like He is changing lives in those circles. Like, and this week, Russell Brand, this new age, he got baptized, and I was like, And I was very skeptical because the first video, like he came out talking about it, it was still a little bit like new age language. And I was like, okay, like I kept watching, and then he started talking about Christ, and he started talking about the person of Jesus, and he started talking about his experience in hedonism, like this world, the pleasures of this world not satisfying him. And then he found Christ, and it was everything that he was missing. And then he gave his life to Christ, and this week made a decision to be baptized. And I was like, who would have thought this Hollywood guy who was this new age guru would come to know Jesus as his Lord? But it just goes to show you like the power of God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he's saved, like Paul in the Bible, like he was you could say an extremist, you could say he was a terrorist, right? Like he was killing Christians, people who are professing Jesus, and yet he became an instrument of God himself, of Jesus himself. So,
well, the last podcast was literally, I don't know if you listened to it, but with Michael, we spoke about King Manasseh.
Yes,
and
it was hard to listen to at the gym. I said this before we started the episode. I needed my Bible open for it, but I will finish the episode.
Yeah, so pretty much this guy was like, we look at Paul and be like, wow, the change was crazy. I think the change probably even more crazy because Paul is like, what he did after was crazy. But what King Manasseh did, he was a reigning king for 55 years, but he was the worst of the worst kings. Like it literally says in the Bible, like he was worse than every other ruler that has ruled on earth, not even just the Israelites or anything like that. So it was the worst of the worst. And then towards the end of the story, he comes, like, he repents. Yeah.
I haven't read this.
Yeah, wow.
Spoiler alert.
And
what book is that in?
there's in Second Kings and Second Chronicles, one chapter each. But yeah, it's insane. And just like that, if there's another example, like modern day, there's a woman that like sold her body and that kind of stuff. That came to Christ as well recently, and it's like the story's blowing up, and like, wow, like,
with the red hair, I saw that,
and we're just like, it's insane, and there's a lot of like, oh, is she actually being genuine, or because we see people like
there's that Christian skepticism. It's like, oh, I don't know if they've really accepted Jesus. It's okay, just listen. And
I think because we've been hurt by previous people that have done that. So yeah, it's just like like actually seeing this is crazy, because that, for me, seeing someone come from that and actually take that stance, even if they're saying like wrong things because they're still young in their faith, but they're just proclaiming Christ. I'm like, man, like, for instance, Mark Wahlberg is doing stuff, and I don't necessarily agree with what he's saying or doing, but like, he's professing Christ. Like, it's crazy to me that these things are happening, and it's just,
it's cool to see, because these people don't need attention. Like, they're already well known, they're celebrities, like, but then they're using it now to to profess Christ.
It shows me that God is bigger than the evil. Even though we see evil like heaps in the world, it shows me that even in that evil, God is still sovereign, he's still in control of that. Even though sometimes it's hard to see, because it's just like, what does this world come to? But it's all part of his plan, all part of his will. That
as much as it's getting worse,
fruition.
do you think it's also getting better? Like, people are being reached a bit easier through technology, through social media.
That's a good question.
Yeah,
I think there's a point of, I think maybe why we're seeing a lot of these people coming to know Christ is because they've tried everything. It's sort of like the story of Solomon, where he tried everything, and by the end of it, he's still saying like, sorry, God is the way. Like, it's the only way is God. It's the only way is Jesus. Like, I think maybe they've tried all these different things, or even like the pandemic is like, it got people thinking about, okay, well, like, the end is near, sort of thing. I know it's sort of scaring people into it, but then people start thinking about their life and their eternity and what happens when they die and all that kind of stuff. And I think that could be damning. Is that the word? Or it could be actually fruitful. I think it's just how you sort of respond to it. And I think
my answer is that it absolutely is getting worse. Like, the world is becoming more and more godless, and you're seeing ideas that are just so like, they're just totally anti-God. They're totally against the way that God has created life. Like the way that God has designed life is beautiful. The way that God has designed family is beautiful. The way that God has desired, relationships and what work ethics and bioethics and all these different things that God has created. The world is just rejecting and hates God more and more and more. And but to your point, Jonah, like the light has shone and the darkness has not overcome it. Like that's from John chapter 1. And so and another thing I was listening to on YouTube was about how the church of God, Christ's church, is unshakable. Like even in such a godless world, Christ's church will not be shaken. And we get to be part of that. Like that is our privilege, and it's not our doing. It's obviously the power of God, but it is scary. Jesus is coming back, and people need to be ready for it. If not, then they will be damned, and it's sad and it's scary for them. But we can feel it. We can feel he's coming back soon. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know you said it's worse, and I would agree with you that it's getting worse.
Yeah.
But then I look at history, and I'm like, there have been times wars, but even like before the world wars, there's also different wars. But like, if you just read a bit about history, like, wow, that's disgusting. Like the way they treated slaves and the way they treated women, like it's
different problems.
Yeah, but I still would agree with him that it's getting worse, getting godless.
Yeah.
I think it was always sinful, but now it's like everything is actually trying to take God out of things.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's actually becoming. I think sin has always been around. I don't know if there's been different levels of sin in the world, but I think what the issue is like everything is trying to rip out
everything good,
Christ.
Everything that God has created to be good and perfect and lovely has now actually been corrupted in some way.
Yeah, crazy.
And it will only get worse.
We've been on for an hour-ish. I'm happy to continue. It's up to you guys.
I think we finish it up.
Finish it up?
Really?
I think, look, we the thing is we had another topic. Maybe you'll have to bring us back. We had another topic. Which,
please like and subscribe.
But that one is such a big, meaty topic.
Yeah, it is.
And it's like,
we kind of touched on it though. Sorry.
Yeah, look, the topic, we'll say it, but you know what? Do we not say it? Let's not say it. Let's keep it.
I keep hitting this thing and it's like.
Let's keep it a surprise.
Okay. But it's a very short episode.
1 hour.
It is a short episode and he's probably
It'll
going to
be like 50 minutes.
And it was mostly about music. How interesting. Not mostly, but like.
You know what's wild to me? That was not one of the topics we were going to talk about.
That's usually what happens.
Yeah, it just happened.
Yeah. I said look, if you ever come on the podcast, I said this to Stephen before, is like, just give me the start, like how you, like, I always ask the guests what's on your heart.
Yeah.
And just give me like the starting point, and I'm sure that we can lead a conversation. It's just like, to me, it's just a conversation between me and a guest or me and the guest, and it's just recorded. So it's just us having a conversation that is recorded.
You know, the last thing I'll say. Okay. This is very random. It's actually going back to a point you were saying about prayer and how you were in your car, and it just got me thinking about the way.
It's so funny.
I'm like, we're done. And I'm like, actually, we're going to go back half an hour. No, because I wanted to say it at the time.
I have another topic,
I wanted to say it at the time, and it's not really related to the other topic, but basically I was thinking about, or I read recently about Moses, and this really blessed me. And it was the way that Moses prayed was so just different, and it was so like not the way I pray. Like I pray but when Moses prayed, and this was after the golden calf incident, and God had basically said, I'm no longer going to deal with Israel. I'm only going to deal with you. And then Moses steps up as the mediator, like he was interceding on Israel's behalf. And Moses prays about 3 things. It's amazing to read. I can't recall the exact chapter, but it's probably between Exodus like 25 and 35, somewhere in that like bandwidth. And bandwidth is not the right word. But basically, he prays. He actually reminds God. Well, there's three things that he prays. So he prays about God's glory. He reminds God of his promises, and he reminds God of his grace. And so when he's praying, he talks about God's glory in that if you don't save Israel, what will Egypt say about you? What will Egypt say about us? And it's like, God doesn't need but we would think that, but Moses basically having this holy conversation with God in prayer was bringing up God's glory to him and saying, but Lord, if you do this, your glory will be magnified. And it just made me think, how often do we pray for God's glory in our prayers? Because for me, it's like, I'll pray the whole your will be done at some point. But how much am I praying and really seeking for God to be glorified in my life or in my prayer requests or in other people's lives when I'm praying for other people? But then he reminds God of his promises and the promises that he really needed to cling to. And the last thing I don't really remember it off the top of my head, but then he reminded God of the grace. You've already been so kind. You've already been so gracious to free us from slavery in Egypt. Therefore, please do not leave us and please keep going with us. And God obviously did respond to that. But I don't know, when you brought up prayer, I was just that's something recently. I'm like, wow, Lord, help me to pray for your glory. Help me to actually focus on that and less about my desires and less about what I'm seeking in my life.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I realized that so I've been reading Genesis as well. And then I put a pause on that because I wanted to read a little bit of the New Testament. And my friends were all reading Luke. There was 3 friends who were reading Luke, and I was like, I'll read it with them. And that was that was such a strong theme.
Really?
Prayer. Yeah. And just, I lost my train of thought. Oh my gosh.
Okay. We should have a count every time someone loses their train of thought.
Look, if this episode wasn't going out tomorrow, then maybe I'll just add a counter. But
yeah.
Oh yeah, you should.
Just a button.
It's coming out tomorrow, so
every
I don't know
time
if the effort and botherness for that. The time.
Sorry, just
But good. That's good.
That was literally it. That was everyone read Luke.
Yeah, can I add something on?
Please.
On sort of to your point as well. I've been reading Psalms recently, and usually, this year, I was reading 4 books at once, and then when it got to Psalms, I was like, I'm just going to read Psalms, and it's weird because Psalms is a book that you would sort of add to other books. It's you read something and then you read a Psalm a day. Yeah. But for me, I'm just I'm going to read a Psalm a day, whatever. What I've realized is that all the Psalms are different, whatnot. But what I realized is it doesn't matter what the psalmist was going through. He always, whether it's usually at the end, but he always talks about God. And it could be I'm so sinful, I'm this, that's the whole psalm. But then at the end it'd be but God, I know that you are good. God, I know that you're gracious. I don't know. There's always a part in it that is just about God. And it's okay, God, I know that even though the situation sucks, I know that this is who you are. And it's reminding, in my eyes, it's reminding himself about God's character. And I've been trying to do that in my life when I have a terrible day or something. Still remind myself God, sometimes I don't feel you, but I know that you were there, because the psalmist says that as well. And I think it's so important to actually just understand that, because it's still comforting, even if we don't feel him, even if we're struggling with whatever it is. It's God, I know that you're still there. I know that your hand is over everything. It's just a reminder. It's just okay, I know. And it's bringing him into everything as well.
If you think about it, prayer is truly amazing, because prayer is amazing because we actually, as his children, get to move the heart of God, right? And we get so caught up in God's sovereignty, what's the point of praying if his will, no, but our prayer does affect God. When we talk to him, and we present our requests before him, he's moved. And you see it like I've read Genesis this year, and you see throughout Genesis and throughout Exodus as well with Israel in Egypt, that you see the little phrase, it's like, God remembered this person, God remembered Israel, or God heard the cries of whatever. And we think, does that mean God forgot? Or does that mean God wasn't hearing at some point? It's like God is all-knowing and he's all present and he hears everything, he sees everything. Nothing is hidden from his sight. But this is the thing about prayer, is that when we pray, this is the interpretation that I hold to about God remembering someone, is that God actively turns his attention towards them. And so when we pray, God does that, right? But we do need to be cautious about how we pray. Like if there's two things that Bashar has preached on that have formed like the way that I pray. One of them was from Ecclesiastes 5, and the other one was from his most recent sermon, which was in Revelation to the Christ's letter to the church in Laodicea. What Bashar preached a year ago on Ecclesiastes chapter 5 was about, sometimes we're really loose with our words to God. We make promises to God. We make vows with God that we cannot keep. And if you read Ecclesiastes chapter 5, it's very clear. It's better not to make a vow at all to God. Or do not make a promise that you cannot keep. And then it goes on to talk about how we shouldn't even dream. Like it's like it, and it's interesting because yes, we naturally have dreams, but the whole idea that, at least what I remember of how Bashar preached about it, was how sometimes we get lost in our dreams and we get lost in our plans, and we have like a 5-year plan, and yeah, we pray about those things, and it's like it's good to plan, it's good to dream, but leave room for God in that. But the other thing that he preached about in the Church of Laodicea was how when we magnify Christ in our prayers, all of the other things that we were initially going to come and, Lord, help, I need help in this, and that, they actually become smaller because we've magnified Christ. Yeah. And so I think that comes back to what I was saying before about the glory of God. And Moses prayed for the glory of God, and God was moved so much that he spared a whole nation. So I think it's such a privilege that we have when we pray, and it's so underrated, and we don't even fully understand it. Like I forget regularly how important prayer is, and I pray so like lazy and sloppy prayers sometimes, but it is like it's actually how we live in this world. It's I love it.
Did you have something, Jesse?
I just don't know if it's like if it's that relevant.
It's okay.
It's the parable of the persistent widow in Luke 18. It is about prayer, but it's about being persistent in prayer. Even when you feel like God isn't listening, or God isn't, saying yes to what you're asking for, he still is listening. He's still there, and he still wants to answer your prayer in the way that he sees best. But also this parable touched me because it was just kind of like, do you guys know it? Mm. No. Okay, so I don't know how much I should read of this. He told them a parable to the effect that they ought always to pray and not lose heart. He said, in a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor respected man. And there was a widow in that city who kept coming to him and saying, give me justice against my adversary. Oh, sorry. For a while he refused, but afterward he said to himself, though I neither fear God nor respect man, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will give her justice so that she will not beat me down by her continual coming. And the Lord said, hear what the unrighteous judge says, and will not God give justice to his elect, who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long over them? I tell you, he will give justice to them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? Do you know that parable?
Wow. I mean, I've read it. I just don't remember. I thought that's deep.
Yeah.
But it's because in the Old Testament, like every time people cried out to the Lord, he responded. But the problem was when people were not crying out to the Lord. But that reminded me of Israel.
So I'm gonna have a vulnerable moment.
Do it.
Recently, imagine I just start crying.
Recently,
I had no. Has anyone cried on this?
Yeah, Jeanette did.
Oh, really? Wow.
I did actually. As
I
well,
totally
so.
watched that episode, Jeanette, if you're watching this. No, so recently you know what's crazy about God is that like I'll just have a thought or I'll just have something that I'm going through, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this too, but like God will literally put it in front of me and be like, okay, this is the answer. And so I went through a bit of a phase where I was kind of like you, Jonah, like I would be like, I need to pray or I need to spend more time, like more quality time with God. And even though like I pray, they're very rushed, or they're not like, I'm not being super vulnerable with God. And so like recently I was just kind of like having these thoughts and I was a bit discouraged and I didn't want to pray. And then my friend literally sent me this passage, and that's, I guess, when I kind of wanted to start reading Luke. But also, just disclaimer, like I didn't even share that with my friend. She had no clue, but she just said, "Hey, like it's on my heart to like send this to you." And I was like, "Oh," she's like, "Yeah, I've been reading Luke, and I just kind of like, just thought maybe this would be helpful." And then I read it, and I was like, "Wow, God is really telling me right now, like, don't lose heart, don't." Don't be discouraged from praying, like just come to me and speak to me. And I remember going and sitting down in front of God, and I started crying, and I started like just pouring out my heart to him and everything that was like bothering me and everything that was I guess hindering that connection. And yeah, and I like experienced that. But I think like that's why it spoke to me so much, because it was like, just because he's not giving you an answer, or because like I don't even know why I was so discouraged at that time. I can't tell you right now, but I'm sure there was something in my life that I was like waiting on God for, or I was seeking an answer for, and I didn't hear from him. And I think that sometimes because we don't hear God the way that we expect to hear him, we get so discouraged. And it's like God's not listening, God's not here, but he is there. And I think we should stop expecting him to show up in a way that we want him to, but just let him surprise us in the way that he wants to show up.
I love it. It's amazing. No,
That's nice.
No. A quote instantly came to me.
Oh yeah,
from
tell
your
us.
mum.
Oh, my mum.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The ending. No, can I say it?
Oh, we may need to edit this one out.
No, it's let God surprise you with your dreams.
Oh yes, my mum has been telling me that since I was a teenager.
Love you, auntie.
that's cute.
Yeah, love you, auntie, because she's watching this.
I'll send it to her.
Yeah. He's your mum.
Just to add on to both your points, because what's interesting is again, I'm going to bring up the Psalms, but with the Psalms is that I don't know if this is very, like, if I can say this full chest, but from what I can understand is that the times that David suffered the most was when he was quiet. Because when he was like that, I think there was a year from the Bathsheba thing to when he wrote Psalm 51. I'm not too sure if there was anything in between, but I think there was a year where he was just living quietly. And I don't know if the Bible says anything on this, but I would assume that was like his worst year, because he was quiet. He was probably in shame, probably. Again, don't take me for this. I probably have to do more research on it. But from what I can sort of see, it's like that would probably be his hardest time. I don't know if the Bible says it, and it's often when we are quiet.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're just like, I think maybe we don't say it, but sometimes we act like, God, I'm going to let you do everything. And we don't actually put in effort. Like we don't actually be like, God, I need you, or like, I want to talk to you, or we don't apply God into our lives in any way. And we just sort of just expect him to sort of just pop out of nowhere and fix it. Sometimes he does, because he loves us that much. But most of the time we actually just got to step up.
Yeah.
And we got to actually just reach out.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, a lot of the things that we do just require a step, and then he will do the rest. But we just need to take that initiative.
Also, don't underestimate just crying out to God in that time of need.
Yeah.
Basically just saying, like, as he said, Lord, I need you. Like, in this moment, I can't even put to words why I need you and what I need from you, but I just need you. And like, so many times I've done that, and God's literally shown up in that moment. It's something that you told me, like a story of someone who was struggling with temptation. It was like a celebrity or someone.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And then she just had a moment, and that stuck with me, like after you told me that story, because it was just like someone who had like turned their life around, and they were then, you know, struggling with temptation, and they were just kind of like, Lord, I need you in that moment. And the way that God shows up, like it
is just about crying out to him.
Yeah.
And it's not just one cry and be like, oh God, I don't feel you. Continue. Like it's a daily thing.
It is a two-way street though. Like you have to put in the effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
To know God and experience him, to be able to
I think
hear from him.
I think that's probably like one of the biggest, from what I can see in my life and in people in lives around me, is it's such a misconstrued thing that we don't take part in our growth. Yeah. Like it's all like God did everything, and in some sense he did, but we also have to take steps. It's like, like he did probably everything, but we also, without us actually putting an effort or showing a bit of discipline or whatever it is, I don't think he would actually, like, I don't think we would grow as much. I don't think what God's, I don't know, I'm not gonna
No, you're right on, like right, spot on.
No, I agree.
Anything else? Or
well, no, that's it from me.
I think it'll probably be an hour 15 minutes.
Look, from my end, I'd like to just have some closing remarks. So no, I'm just kidding. I have nothing.
Nice. Would love to have you guys again. Maybe we can add some other cousins on.
Oh yeah.
Why so it sounds so disappointed?
No, because
she wanted you to invite her back.
No, yeah. I'm saying you guys and other cousins.
Yeah, don't make me sound like that. No, because I'm like, I don't know how we're going to convince them. Like, I literally just had a cousin on the phone before we started, and he was like, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this.
It's true. Look, they've all...
How many mics do you have?
Just 3, but we can share them.
Yeah, we can.
Like, I had 6 people on the podcast before.
Have you? Oh, you have actually, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you know that.
I've watched it.
Well, thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you so
much. A blessing.
Thank you for having us.
Anytime, any place.
We hope this was helpful and entertaining. We haven't been funny today, Stephen.
We haven't.
I think naturally.
We on the way here, we were like, we're probably just going to be joking and laughing, and like, I don't know how serious we're going to be.
Like, Christians are boring and lifeless. So
and we have no humor. We have no sense of humor.
That's right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you all for watching. See you next Monday, and peace.